What's an idiom? Medically speaking, of course. How about rules by the sound? Confused? Don't be, those are only the book titles. Let's switch to Japanese. Eigo taiwa jutsu? Does that sound better? That's effective English communication. We're here in Brookline, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston, with Marjorie Whittaker. She's the owner and principal of the Whittaker Group that trains non-US executives to work effectively in the United States, from a communication standpoint, from a cultural standpoint as well. Marjorie, welcome.
Thank you very much.
To the Language of Business.
Nice to be here, Greg.
It's nice to have you here. So how do your services differ from a very specialized ESL or English as a second language curriculum?
Well, the ESL programs are generally theoretical in nature, and they deal with a lot of the foundations of the language, so reading and writing and listening and speaking, but it's more focused on vocabulary and grammar and spelling. And what we do is we take all those skills and help clients apply them to practical communication situations so they can succeed at their workplace.
Do you only train on communication or also culture as well?
Culture is a big piece of what we do as well.
And how do you train culture?
Well, a lot of times people from other countries aren't familiar with things like small talk or networking or even having conversations on the phone. So a lot of their skills they need to really apply in different kinds of communication contexts. And that's where culture comes in.
What happens if the requirements of somebody's workplace dictate a certain communication style that is not the same as someone's culture where they grew up?
Well, we often have to go over that and just have discussions and have them be more aware of what's expected here and what's acceptable and what they're used to. For example, a lot of my clients from Asia are very uncomfortable talking about themselves. They feel that it's boastful and they really don't want to brag about themselves. But then if you want to have a successful job interview, you do need to be able to talk about your accomplishments and not be reserved about that, so things like that.
Now, do you specialize in specific nationalities?
I work with people from all over the world and all different professions.
And how do you find them, or better yet, how do they find you?
A lot of it is word of mouth. They can find us on their website, on the Whittaker Group website, and because we're in an area where there's so many medical centers and universities, there's a lot of opportunity to meet with the international community.
Do you ever work with entire universities or entire companies overseas?
I work with companies here that are global companies, and the university students tend to come to me.
You're watching The Language of Business. My guest is Marjorie Whittaker. She is the owner and principal of the Whittaker Group, a very interesting company that trains people from outside of the United States to do well in their workplaces here, specifically in English. English is not something that you can necessarily teach out of a book, yet your books are so very detailed, they're really impressive. How do you bridge the gap between grammatically correct English and actually spoken English in the workplace?
Well, basically our books are just one component of what we do. So rules by the sound and medically speaking rules and rules, they are very detailed to work within our sessions and then for clients to work on independently. But the rules really generalize to everyday conversation. So if we've taught the rule for compound nouns, let's say, you can look at a Trader Joe's circular and say, oh, I need to buy ice cream as opposed to ice cream. So it's really something that they can take and learn the rules and then apply them to their everyday life.
Do people get frustrated with the infamous Boston accent?
No, I think they're amused by it more than anything else. Yeah.
Talk to us about small talk. How you're able to train somebody to not just grammatically get something across, but actually blend into the workplace seamlessly.
Well, as far as small talk, I usually tell people to be prepared. So if they're going to go to a situation where they will be interacting with people whom they don't know, have one or two topics ahead of time, and oftentimes that's a little bit of a discussion before the meeting, just to talk about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. I tell them to be interested, to be the first one to shake someone's hand and say hello, and oftentimes they'll meet someone who would be more than happy to talk about themselves and take some of the pressure off of them.
Have you ever had a client who you've had to dramatically change their communication style from the beginning of your work with them to the end?
It's a process, and so everyone's different. We assess everyone when they come in to see what their strengths and challenges are, and then we tailor-make a program to help them achieve their goals.
And do most people make that dramatic change?
I see a dramatic change, yes.
And how long does that usually take?
Usually 2 or 3 months. If they come for classes, let's say once a week, and then do their independent assignment, which might be working on our online platform or practicing their presentations and things that are work-related. After a few months' time, you can really see some big changes in confidence in particular.
Have you ever gone the opposite way? Have you ever trained U.S. executives who are looking to work overseas?
Not so much, but there's definitely, with globalization, there are more and more requests for that kind of thing as well.
How do you get people over the hump that English doesn't really follow rules?
Well, we do teach them the rules that we've been able to identify, and then I just say there are lots of exceptions and not to take themselves so seriously and don't be afraid to make mistakes. And it's really about getting your point across. It's the most important thing and not being perfect.
What would you say has been your biggest success in terms of improving business communication?
Well, I think it's making people feel confident that they can walk into a meeting or into a presentation and feel like they're the expert and know that people are listening to them and not judging them and not confused about what they're saying, and that's really a big thing for them.
Excellent. Thank you, Marjorie.
Thank you very much.
Marjorie Whittaker, owner and principal at the Whittaker Group here in Brookline, Massachusetts. On today's episode, we talked about improving business communication, how to get it right, how to get it better, and how to avoid many faux pas along the way. I'm Greg Stoller, and thank you for watching The Language of Business.